If there are levels of zombie movies, then the zombies in this movie is definitely the boss level. Not only do they have agile speed and powerful attack strength, the number of zombies is also incredibly humongous. Just one look makes people's skin tingling. If you are unfortunate enough to be in such a post-apocalyptic world, I dare say you will not survive more than 2 minutes at most. Let's revisit the $180 million epic zombie world war. The story begins on a busy Philadelphia street. Pete and his family are about to go out, but the crowded roads are blocking their way. Pete turns on the radio and there's a news report on the radio. Brady's has broken out in 12 countries around the world. The outbreak has become uncontrollable. Old Pete was listening in fascination. A motorcycle suddenly whizzed by, scraped off the reflector of the car. He wanted to get out of the car to argue, but the other side had already disappeared. Pete was just about to return to the car. In the distance there was suddenly a violent explosion, as if there was some kind of riot. The quiet streets suddenly became agitated. The traffic police urged everyone to return to the car immediately. Unexpectedly, the next moment was hit by a speeding truck. As an investigator, Pete recognized the danger of foot of gas and followed the runaway truck to escape from here. However, at that moment, a fire truck suddenly sprang out. 2 cars were involved in a car accident. Luckily, the Pitt family was not seriously injured. At the same time, the zombie virus began a massive outbreak. The entire city of Philadelphia was instantly turned into hell. The zombies were interspersed with the crowd. They were incredibly fast and agile. They attacked humans with reckless abandon. As long as the zombies are targeted, there is almost no chance of survival, and the speed of mutation is extremely fast. Once bitten, it takes only 12 seconds to turn into a zombie. In a panic, Pete found an RV and left Philadelphia with his family. But in just a few minutes, the city had completely fallen. Pete drove all the way to the outskirts of the city, temporarily escaped the zombie attack. That's when Eric, a top UN official, calls and says he'll send a helicopter to pick up Pete within an hour. As a good retired investigator, the organization needs him now, but his daughter had an asthma attack. They must first go to the store to get medicine, so they went to the nearest supermarket. The situation here is also very bad. Due to time constraints, the family had to split up. Pete was in charge of getting the medicine while his wife went to get food. But when Pete came out of the pharmacy, he saw 2 criminals robbing his wife. Without saying a word, he shot one of them. The other one ran away. They came out of the store and found the RV had already been driven away. Pete immediately called Eric to tell him his problem. But Eric said the helicopter might not make it. At the latest, it would take until the next morning. There was no choice. Pete had to take his family to a nearby apartment for shelter. They fled from the zombies. They were taken in by a Mexican family upstairs. By the early hours of the next morning, Pete suggested they come with him, but they refused. Pete had to respect their wishes. He started making equipment to fight the zombies. Everything was ready. They set out, but as soon as they opened the door to the stairwell, a zombie jumped on them. The quick-witted Pete shot it and killed it. But at the same time, the sound of gunfire also attracted more zombies. They could only run to the rooftop desperately, but the speed of the zombies is too fast. Pete had to cover from behind. A zombie pounced on him in the nick of time. The zombie is suddenly shot down. It's a child of a Mexican family. The zombies were swarming in. Pete had to block the door and let the others go first. When they are safe, Pete quickly ran to the helicopter. Under the cover of the soldiers' fire, Pete was rescued. The helicopter landed at sea on an aircraft carrier. This was the safest place to be for now. The situation is much more serious than Pete had imagined. The virus is spreading rapidly around the world. Even the president is dead, but the government knows nothing about the virus. The only clue is an email received from South Korea. They call the mutated infected people zombies, but now they've lost contact with them to stop this disaster. The Supreme Commander wants Pitt to lead a doctor to investigate the cause. Once we find out the source of the virus, it should be possible to develop an antiviral serum. Peter refused on the spot because he didn't want to leave his family, but there's no room for idle hands here. To be safe, you have to work for the government. The implication is that if you don't work, get off the ship. Pete had no choice but to agree. After saying goodbye to his family, he got on a plane to Korea. The doctor was confident about this mission. He felt that the virus was like a killer in nature. It must have left some kind of clue when it was working. Once he found it, everything could be solved. When Pete heard that, he thought he was very capable. But as soon as the plane reached its destination, a large number of zombies pounced on him. The young doctor had never seen such a scene before. He panicked. He turned around and tried to return to the cabin, but he slipped. The gun in his hand went off, sending him to God on the spot. Luckily, the American troops stationed here came to meet them and brought them safely to the camp. Although the doctor is dead, but the mission must continue. With everything in the lab was reduced to ashes. The captain told Pete that the man in the hospital bed was the first infected person at the camp. He was a medic sent to verify the cause of death of a soldier. Little did he know that the soldier had mutated, The medic was bitten and infected with the virus. He came back to the camp and attacked the others. They knocked the zombies down and burned them. It only barely stopped the zombies here since all the clues have been burned. As for how the soldier was infected, the captain didn't know either. Just when Pete thought he was going home with nothing, a CIA intelligence officer in custody seemed to have something to say. He said Israel was living inside the wall before the outbreak of the virus. The whole country was completely sealed off. If you want answers, go to the capital of Israel, find a man named Tom. So Pete was ready to leave for Jerusalem. Before he could leave, he had to fill up the plane's fuel tanks to reduce the noise. They rode their bikes in the direction of the plane. While they were on their way, Pete's cell phone suddenly rang. The zombies nearby were instantly awakened. The resident soldiers immediately fired to cover. The captain was responsible for refueling the plane. Pete and the others also reached the cabin safely, but the cost was the loss of all the resident troops after an overnight flight. The plane landed safely in Jerusalem. Pete told the pilot to stay here waiting for himself to return before nightfall. Not only have they built up their fortifications, they're also receiving refugees from other countries. But just then, the army of zombies outside the wall suddenly became agitated. It turned out that the refugees inside the wall were celebrating their survival. They were singing happily. The noise of the microphone was so loud that thousands of zombies were drawn to the same place. They were like building a human ladder. They were approaching the wall as fast as the eye could see. The world's last fortress was about to be breached. It was then that Pete was the first to notice that something was wrong, but it was too late. Hordes of zombies are leaping from the walls. They began to attack the surviving humans. Everyone is frantically running away. Helicopters tried to stop more of them, but the sheer number of them didn't help. They swept in like a wave. The soldiers' bullets are useless. Pete is escorted by soldiers and quickly leaves the scene on the way to escape. Pete saw some strange phenomena. The zombies didn't attack an old man and a skinny, bald boy. But right now, it was important to escape. Pete didn't think much about it. A female soldier to cover him accidentally bitten by a zombie finger. In desperation, Pete cut off the female soldiers armed with a knife. This method is very effective. After 12 seconds, the female soldier did not change, but the helicopter that came to pick them up got tangled up and the walkers instantly lost control. It crashed on the spot, and the plane waiting at the airport also left early. In desperation, Pete saw a passenger plane taking off not far away. Soldiers forced the airliner to stop. Pete was sent up safely. Looking down, the whole of Israel has fallen completely while treating the wound of the female soldier. Pete suddenly thought of what he had just seen, the old man and the child who hadn't been attacked by the zombies, and with what the doctor had said, Pete had a bold idea. He immediately used the satellite phone to call Eric. He asked Derek to check the WHO nearby and told the captain to land at the nearest World Health Center. But not surprisingly, an accident happens right away. A puppy seems to have found something in the plane. The flight attendant opened the door to the toilet and a zombie suddenly appeared inside. The unusual shaking made him aware of the danger. People who were sleeping were awakened. Pete slowly approached and opened the curtain to see. Oh my God! Pete instructed everyone to keep quiet. Then together with the box to block the whole passage. But one of the boxes accidentally fell on the ground. They managed to attract the attention of the zombies. The zombies instantly broke through the defensive line. The cabin became a zombie orgy. The situation is not good. Pete grabbed a grenade and threw it without hesitation. A gap was opened in the plane. The zombies were sucked out by the powerful airflow. Although the zombie attack was avoided, but the plane was about to crash, Pete and the female soldier immediately strapped on their seatbelts, preparing for a close encounter with the ground. Once again, Pete was lucky to survive. Only his abdomen was penetrated by a piece of iron. As lucky as he was the female soldier, the two of them helped each other to continue to move forward. Finally arrived at a nearby WHO center. Saved by the survivors inside because the plane lost contact, the top commanders acquiesced to the failure of the mission. The Pitt family was thrown off the ship. They placed them in the nearest refugee camp. Pete slept for 3 days and 3 nights. When he woke up, the first thing he did was contact Eric to tell them he was still alive. When he found out his family had been kicked off the ship, Pete was instantly furious, but there was nothing Eric could do about it. After all, it's not up to him. At least his family is safe. For now, the mission must go on. The reason Pete is here is to find a deadly pathogen, but at the same time, it can be cured. He thinks that the reason why the zombies ignore some people, it's because they already have the deadly virus in their bodies, and the zombies need healthy humans as hosts. So by injecting pathogens into the body, and disguise the human as a patient, can we avoid the attack of zombies? They think it's a good idea. There are zombies here, so they decided to do an experiment first, but there was a new problem. The pathogens are all in Area B, and it was already occupied by zombies. There are at least a few dozen of them, but it was impossible to give up now. So Pete strapped on his antibiotic gear, he grabbed his weapon and was ready to go. He's joined by a female soldier and one of the researchers. They walked through a long corridor. they made their way cautiously to Section B. The zombies are very sensitive to sound. They didn't dare to make a single sound. They were too nervous. The researcher accidentally touched a cabinet. The sound attracted a walker. The female soldier shot and killed it. But the sound of the gun activated all the zombies. They ran towards the warehouse where the pathogens were, but it's only a matter of time before the walkers catch up with them. Pete steps up again, making noise to draw the walkers away. Let the other two go to the warehouse to get the pathogen. Pete quickly ran into a lab. The walkers were stopped outside, but there were still some left behind with only one zombie. The situation of the female soldier and the researcher is also not optimistic. They were about to reach their destination, but a group of zombies blocked the way. They had no choice but to abandon the mission and go back. Now it was up to Pete alone. Because the zombies were lured away by the two men, he also arrived at the pathogen warehouse without any problems because of the inability to contact the others. Pete also did not know which pathogens are, so he had to bring a few bottles of each kind with. Just as he was about to leave, a zombie came to the door. Since the weapon was outside, Pete didn't know what to do. He had to risk injecting himself with pathogens, but he didn't know which one to inject. After a brief moment of hesitation, Pete wrote down a goodbye message to his family. Then he picked one at random to inject himself with. When Pete felt it was almost ready, then he opened the door of the warehouse. It seemed to be just as Pete had thought. This method worked. The zombies bypassed him. The crowd was amazed. Pete calmly drank a can of Coke. Then he made a noise to attract all the walkers in the hallway. He got lucky. He was injected with a curable pathogen. At the end of the movie, Pete is reunited with his family. The World Health Organization mass-produced the vaccine. It was released to the world, but the crisis didn't end there. Because the source of the virus remains a mystery, humanity will continue to fight. Thanks for watching. If you love movies and want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. Till then, see you on the next video.